Hello friends, and welcome to this Bio 28th TED Talk. Now in the spirit of Halloween, I have decided to do my talk on different stages of human decomposition after death. This is Timothy. Now sadly, Timothy will die in about 30 seconds and take his, and I quote, pink suit, cowboy hat, triple beard, fancy mustache coolness with him. And we are going to use his body to look at the different stages of decomposition. Later, when he is decomposed to nothing but bones and tooth enamel, we are going to look at one of the most important factors when it comes to human decomposition, which is the environment that the body is in. Are you ready? Let's do this. The first stage of decomposition happens when Timothy first dies. His heart will stop, an obvious thing that happens when somebody dies, and his brain stems will begin to die off because of a lack of oxygen and blood flow. His skin will become tight and turn gray, and he will experience some bladder and bowel movement. His body temperature will drop by about 1.5 degrees every hour, depending on the environment his body is in. Since his liver will be the organ that stays warmer for the longest amount of time, it will be used to determine the time of death if his body is found within that time frame. The second stage of human decomposition happens after his body has been dead for about 30 minutes. Timothy's skin will become a purple color and get a waxy texture like this crayon. As the blood leaves the body, his lips, fingernails, and toenails will become either a pale or white color. The blood will pool to the lower parts of the body and create lividity, which is a dark purple and black stain. Timothy's hand and feet will begin to turn blue, and his eyes will sink to the back of his skull. The third stage of decomposition happens after Timothy's been dead for about 4 hours. Now, rigor mortis will begin to set in on his body, and the pooling of blood and discoloration of skin will continue. Now, if you don't know what rigor mortis is, it is the stiffening of the joints and muscles that happens about an hour or so after you die, and it will last for between 1 to 4 days, and afterwards, your body will go limp again. In the fourth stage of decomposition, which is about 12 hours after death, nothing really happens except Timothy's cold dead body is in full rigor mortis. On to the fifth stage of decomposition. This happens about 24 hours after he is dead, and his body temperature will now be the same as his environment. His head and neck are now a greenish blue color, and this color spreads to the rest of his body. His face is now not recognizable, and that famous dead smell begins to set in. The sixth stage of decomposition happens after Timothy has been dead for about 3 days. The gases in his body's tissue start to form large blisters on the skin, and the body begins to bloat in a very grotesque way. Fluids will also begin to leak from his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, as well as his rectum and urinary openings. We now arrive to the seventh and final stage of decomposition, which happens when Timothy's been dead for about 3 weeks or more. His hair and nails and skin become loose enough to pull away from the body, and his skin begins to crack and burst in certain areas because of internal gas buildup, as well as just, the general decomposition of the skin itself. Timothy will continue to decompose until he is nothing more than a skeleton. Years and centuries later, all that will be left of him are his teeth and jawbone. It is known that the tooth enamel is probably the strongest substance in the body, and the jawbone is the densest. Now that we've reviewed the different stages of decomposition, let's look at that important factor in decomposition that I mentioned earlier, which is the environment that the body is in. Now, the environment that the body is in is a big thing when it comes to how fast the body will decompose. If Timothy is buried in a hot climate, his body will decompose to its skeletal form in a month or less. However, if it's buried in a cold environment, it'll take about 2 months for him to decompose to its skeletal form. If Timothy had a Viking funeral and he was buried in the water, it would take about half the time it takes for him to decompose than if he were buried in a low moisture or water-free environment. Why? Because the water speeds up the bloating that I mentioned in stage 6. Thank you so much for watching this TED Talk video on different stages of decomposition of the human body. And I will hope to see you guys soon.